Johnny was always an ordinary guy. 28 years old, he worked as an accountant, lived alone in a small apartment on the outskirts of the city. Nothing special happened in his life until one night everything changed. When Johnny returned home from work, he noticed that something was wrong. He couldn't put his finger on it, but it felt like someone had been in the apartment while he was away. Everything was in its place, but the atmosphere had changed. Chalking it up to fatigue, Johnny decided to take a shower. He went into the bathroom and turned on the light. When he looked in the mirror, he saw his usual reflection. But something was wrong. It was as if the reflection was a moment late in moving. Johnny rubbed his eyes. "I must be really tired," he thought. The next day, everything was normal, but in the evening when Johnny looked in the mirror again, he froze in horror. His reflection was smiling at him, even though Johnny himself did not move a single muscle in his face. "Hello, Johnny," the reflection said. "It's nice to finally meet you in person." Johnny recoiled, but couldn't take his eyes off the mirror. "Who are you? What's going on?" The reflection laughed. "I am you, Johnny, or rather, a better version of you. I exist in every mirror, in every reflection, and I'm tired of being just a shadow." Over the next few days, Johnny tried to avoid mirrors, but it was impossible. His reflection appeared everywhere, in windows, on his phone screen, even in a glass of water, and each time it became stronger, more real. Johnny began to notice changes in himself. He began to forget some moments of his life, as if someone was erasing his memories. Instead, new, strange memories appeared, of places he had never been, of people he had never met. One evening, Johnny realized that he could no longer control his body. He watched his hands move on their own as he said words he didn't mean to say. The reflection in the mirror smiled at him. "Don't worry, Johnny. I'll take care of your life better than you can. You had every opportunity, but you didn't use it. Now it's my turn." Johnny tried to scream, but he couldn't. He felt his consciousness receding, being replaced by something else. The last thing he saw was his own face in the mirror, but with a strange, cold look. Since that day, Johnny has changed. He became more confident and successful. People were surprised by this sudden change, but attributed it to personal growth. No one knew that the real Johnny now existed only as a silent observer in his own body, looking at the world through the mirror of his own eyes, unable to change anything. And his reflection? It had disappeared. Now, when Johnny looked in the mirror, he saw only his usual reflection. But sometimes, when no one was looking, he would wink at himself, and the same cold, alien smile would appear on his face. James Foster moved into an old house on the outskirts of Portland, looking for peace and solitude. His neighbors rarely saw him. He only went out for groceries and sometimes for evening walks. No one knew what he was doing, and James was quite happy with that. The house was old, with creaky floors and faded wallpaper, but it was the large antique mirror in the living room that caught James's eye the most. It was in a heavy gilded frame, with barely noticeable cracks along the edges of the glass. The first few weeks passed quietly. James tried to settle into his new place, fighting the insomnia that had plagued him for years. But one evening, everything changed. As James walked past the mirror, he noticed movement out of the corner of his eye. He turned sharply, but saw only his reflection. Chalking it up to fatigue, he went to bed. The next night, the situation repeated itself. This time, James could have sworn he saw the face of a young man in the mirror, which quickly disappeared. James's heart beat faster, but he convinced himself that it was just a play of light and shadow. Every day, the strange events increased. James began to see more and more strangers in the mirror. They would appear for a moment and disappear, but their faces were full of pain and accusation. James tried to ignore these visions. He started drinking to numb his anxiety and fear, but alcohol only made things worse. Now he saw ghosts not only in the large mirror, but also in every reflective surface, windows, TV screen, even a glass of water. One night James woke up with the feeling that someone was watching him. He opened his eyes and saw that the room was filled with ghostly figures. They were silently looking at him, and in their eyes he saw pain, fear, and accusation. James screamed and ran for the door, but the ghosts surrounded him. He recognized some of the faces: a young Afghan boy, an elderly woman from Iraq, a group of teenagers from Syria. All of them he had seen through the scope of his sniper rifle, because James Foster was not always a lonely drunk in an old house. He used to be a sergeant in an elite sniper unit, carrying out covert missions all over the world. He was the best at what he did. He never missed. But every shot, every face he saw in the last moment of their lives stayed with him forever. Now they all came for him. James fell to his knees, begging for forgiveness, but the ghosts did not retreat. They reached out to him, and James felt a coldness pierce his body. The neighbors found James the next morning. He was lying on the living room floor, his eyes wide open, and a look of indescribable horror frozen on his face. The large mirror was broken, and shards were scattered all over the room. The police attributed it to an accident. A drunken man fell and broke the mirror. But those who saw James's body said that his hair had turned gray overnight, and his skin bore marks as if he had been touched by dozens of cold hands. James's house stood empty for a long time. No one wanted to buy it, and those who did dare to go inside said that they sometimes saw the faces of strangers in the windows and mirrors, looking at them with mute accusation. Only an old neighbor who sometimes saw James on his nightly walks once said, "You can't escape the past. It will always find a way to remind you of itself, and sometimes our own reflections become our worst nightmares." Emily and Ashley Parker were identical twins, indistinguishable. They lived in the small town of Oakville, Oregon, and were inseparable until their 13th birthday. On that fateful day, the girls decided to go for a bike ride near Blue Pine Lake. Emily looked away for a moment, and when she turned her head, Ashley was gone. The search lasted for several days, but Ashley's body was never found. Police assumed she had fallen into the lake and drowned. A year passed. Emily tried to move on with her life, but her longing for her sister never let go. Her parents, John and Sarah, were too absorbed in their own grief to notice how their daughter was slowly sinking into depression. Everything changed the night before the twins' 14th birthday. Emily woke up in the middle of the night feeling a strange pull. She got out of bed and walked to the bathroom as if guided by an invisible force. When Emily turned on the light and looked in the mirror, she saw Ashley, not her reflection. Her sister looked exactly the same as a year ago, but her eyes were cold and empty. "Happy birthday, sis," Ashley said with a wry smile. Emily closed her eyes, thinking it was a dream. But when she opened them again, Ashley was still there. "You have no idea how lonely it is to be on the other side," Ashley continued. "I missed you so much, my mom and dad. I missed life." From that day on, Ashley began to appear in every reflection. At first, Emily was excited to be able to communicate with her sister again. She told Ashley about school, about her friends, about everything that had happened this year. But gradually, Emily noticed a change in her sister's behavior. Ashley became more and more demanding and angry. She blamed Emily for her death, saying that if Emily had been more attentive, it wouldn't have happened. "You should have been in my place," Ashley often repeated. "It's not fair that you're living and I'm stuck here." Emily tried to avoid mirrors, but Ashley found ways to appear everywhere, in windows, on the phone screen, even in other people's eyes. One night, Emily woke up and saw Ashley standing by her bedside. The ghost of her sister was translucent, but quite tangible. "Come with me, Emily," Ashley whispered. "Let's go swimming in the lake together, forever." Emily realized that Ashley wanted to drag her into Blue Pine Lake. She screamed, waking her parents. When John and Sarah ran into the room, Ashley was gone, but Emily saw her reflection in the window, angry, with eyes full of hatred. Emily told her parents about Ashley. At first they didn't believe her, thinking it was a manifestation of grief. But when Sarah saw Ashley herself in the bathroom mirror, there was no doubt. The Parkers turned to a local psychic, Miss Rosalinda. She explained that Ashley's spirit was stuck between worlds because of her sudden death and unresolved issues. She envies the living and wants to return, said Miss Rosalinda. But the only way for her to do that is to take the place of someone alive, and Emily is her easiest target. Ms. Rosalinda performed a ritual to protect the Parker home and Emily from Ashley's influence. She also taught Emily how to strengthen her mind against her sister's attacks. But Ashley didn't give up. She continued to appear to Emily in her dreams, whispering, tempting her to join her. Emily fought back. She started seeing a psychologist to deal with the trauma and guilt. She also found solace in art, drawing her emotions and fears. Months passed. Ashley's visits became less and less frequent, but Emily knew that her sister was still there, waiting for a moment of weakness. On their 15th birthday, Emily decided to return to Blue Pine Lake. She was standing on the shore looking out over the water when she saw Ashley's reflection next to her. "You can still join me," Ashley said. "We could be together forever." Emily shook her head. "I love you, Ashley. I always will. But my place is here, among the living, and your place is to move on. Please let go of your anger and find peace." For a moment, something like understanding flashed in Ashley's eyes. Then her image trembled and slowly dissolved into the water of the lake. Emily didn't know if it was the end or just a break in their confrontation. But she felt that something had changed. She returned home knowing that whatever the future held, she was ready to face it.